What is up, sports geeks, and welcome back to our first fantasy football video of the 2026-2027 season, joined by Alec. As always, I'm your host, Josh. Alec, we're back, and we're back with six wide receivers here today that we think you need to be targeting. You should not be leaving your drafts without at least a couple of these guys. A lot of them are in the same range here in that, kind of, 40 to 60 range overall. That wide receiver maybe 17 to 30 range overall. But these guys are guys that we think are seriously going to outperform their ADP. We had good history on this last year, Alec, right? I know Jameson Williams was one last year that was going in the 30s, wide receiver 30 range. And he finished as a top 12 wide receiver last year. We had a couple other big hits last year. So we've had a good track record for this, and I think we're going to try to do the same exact thing here. And I think we have six guys that I really, really like. I know I've got three that I like. You've said you have three that you like, and I trust you here. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the first one of the 2026-27 fantasy football season. Alec, who do you have?
Yeah, this is big. We're back. So my first guy, it's going to be Lad McConkey. Fantasy Pros has him as going wide receiver 22 right now off the board. Seems a bit absurd. Mike McDaniel comes over as the new OC. You finally get Greg Roman's ancient, no pun there, but ancient offense, like where, they were run heavy, lot of tight ends, and Keenan Allen. Let's pray for Lad McConkey's sake that Keenan Allen does not get signed in the middle of training camp. But no, Mike McDaniel has a history of wide receivers smashing their ADP. I think Lad's the best target on the team, and I think he's going to smash this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Lad's a guy that we've seen the spurts with Justin Herbert, right? Which, by the way, there's all sorts of stats around quarterbacks' performance after they get married. And he's if he does anything like what a couple other guys have done, he's going to be just fine. But we've seen the connection between Herbert and McConkey be a very, very strong one in years past. But I think the play calling has always been very questionable in what's going on there. So I think when you bring in McDaniels, right, whatever he does as far as motivating a team as a head coach, there's a lot of stuff to criticize there, right? How he manages a team, how he motivates the team, how he, handles culture. There's a lot to criticize there. When you're just putting a play sheet in front of him and saying you handle the offense, he is very, very, very good. And it is a fantasy owner's dream to have stake in that offense. And I think you're right. Lad McConkey's going to be the wide receiver one here, right? Last year, Quentin Johnson had his little run. Those were really just deep balls that he had a couple of them on, right, in a couple weeks. I think Lad McConkey's going to be the stable wide receiver one here that's destined for 8 to 10 targets a game as soon as they're out of this run-heavy offense and using the biggest strength of this offense, which is Justin Herbert, right? Justin Herbert is the best player in this offense. Let him, step back in the pocket and cook, and it's going to be Lad McConkey that's resulting because of that.
Yeah, and also kind of another stat to look at. If you look at Justin Herbert over his first couple years in the NFL, he was top 5 in attempts, and that went down the last couple years with that Greg Roman offense. So I think, we've seen him with the howitzer before of just slinging that thing. So I think the attempts are going to be up as well, and that means McConkey's going to get more targets.
Yep, absolutely. I'm going to group two guys here together to my first two. And they're very similar style players here. Both of them are going into year 2. They're being drafted at wide receiver 20 and wide receiver 21 here on Fantasy Pros, 46th and 47th overall. It's Luther Burden at 47th overall and Emeka Egbuka at 46th overall. Yep. Both of these guys are going into that second year. I expect a leap from both of them. Both of these guys had a wide receiver that was ahead of them on the depth chart going into last year that was traded or left the team, right? Is no longer with the team. Mike Evans heading over to San Francisco, DJ Moore over to Buffalo. So I look at the situation. Last year, both of these guys had very, very good, start to the season for Egbuka, close to the season for Burden. There's a reason why both of these teams were willing to let DJ Moore and Mike Evans walk, and it's because of Burden and Egbuka. I look at Burden at the end of the year last year, and he was Caleb Williams' maybe favorite target outside of Colston Loveland, right? Yes, Rome Odunze is still there. Everything I've seen about Bears camp has been that Burden is the alpha in this wide receiver room. I fully expect Burden to he's going to be on the field at all times. And he is the kind of just chess piece that will be moved around everywhere in this Ben Johnson offense, right? He's going to be in the slot. He's going to be out wide. He's going to be on end rounds. He's a guy you want the ball in his hands because he's explosive after the catch. And Caleb Williams is going to be a stud this year. He was a stud last year. Expect Burden to go off. When it comes to Egbuka, he dealt with, had the hamstring injury in week 6, really didn't get back to himself. The first 5 weeks of the year, he was the wide receiver 3, right? And I know he had 5 touchdowns in 5 weeks, right? You would expect to have some negative regression there, but he had 8 targets a game in the first 5 weeks of his career, right? Not of the season, of his career. And then Mike Evans leaves. I think Egbuka is going to walk into this offense. Yes, you still have Godwin there. Yes, you still have, other guys that are going to be there. McMillan's there, right? You would think he's going to be coming back, but he's coming back from a freak injury. Egbuka's the alpha here. Burden's the alpha in that offense. Those are 2 guys I want. If you're looking at the end of the 4th round, maybe you're sitting there at the 4-5 turn, and you're looking to go for, a wide receiver, 2 and 3 for you. Maybe it's 1 and 2. These guys are really stable options that I think the ceiling is certainly there. Both these guys could be top 10 wide receivers, but the floor is also up there too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. I think, usually in a fantasy draft, it's kind of nerve wracking to maybe draft 2 guys at the 4 or 5 turn that weren't elite last year or have prior, kind of experience of that. But I think you kind of hit the nail on the head where both guys are in a prime position. Caleb Williams is a stud. Ben Johnson does not give out compliments lightly. He compared him to Amon-Ra St. Brown today.
Yeah.
He compared him to Jarvis Landry, who caught 112 balls in a year once, led the NFL in catches 1 year. Ben Johnson last year was angry at him because he couldn't learn the playbook and made that very obvious. So for him to be singing his praises that much this early in camp, the stock is going up for sure.
Yeah.
And then for Egbuka, I mean, you're right. Chris Godwin's almost 31 years old. Jalen McMillan almost he did break his neck last year. Was kind of iffy coming back last year with Baker. So I think Egbuka, what he showed, kind of a spoiler alert for who's coming up next, but Mike Evans leaving, the target share is going to be, in Egbuka's favor. And then last thing I wanted to say as well, Baker, he's angry. When Baker is in a contract year, he always balls out. Health pending, he always balls out. And if Egbuka is going to be the alpha in that offense, I think we're going to be choosing him a lot early on when we have our favorite 3 starts of the week. I think Egbuka is going to be on those lists early.
Yeah. He's going to be on the list until we just don't feel right.
Until he's just normally a top 12 receiver.
Yes, yeah, but
I think that's what's going to happen.
It's crazy though that we talk about guys going wide receiver 20 right now, and we feel very confident that by week 4 or 5, you and I are not going to be allowed to talk about him, Alec, because he's going to be a lock in your lineup. There's no way you're taking him out. So if you can get a guy at the end of the 4th round, beginning of the 5th round that is going to be cemented into your lineup, how many times do you take a 4th or 5th round pick that you look back on and you're like, oh man, I can't believe I just wasted that pick. You will not waste a pick if you take Emeka Egbuka. And I think that's part of what you get out of him too, is you look at what you're going to get at the end of the season. You got 5 weeks last year of absolutely elite play. By the end of the season last year, if he didn't have that hamstring injury, we would have been seeing, he would have finished as a top 10 to 12 receiver last year. That's what he's going to be this year, especially with no Mike Evans. And there's no safety valve with Mike Evans. So no, I love Emeka Egbuka, but I'm curious to hear your second one here.
Yeah, so I kind of spoiled it, but I'm going Mike Evans here. I know he has the minor quad strain going on right now because of the substation that they need to move away from in San Fran. I have a bunch of memes already saved on my phone. I'm ready, locked and loaded. But so I think Mike Evans, if he's healthy, we could see kind of like a Devontae Adams finish last year, like Devontae Adams was on the Rams from a touchdown perspective. I know Devontae had 14 touchdowns last year. Yeah. If Mike Evans is healthy, I think it's 10 plus. Like if he plays 16, 17 weeks, I think he's catching 10 touchdowns. And I think if he just catches 10 touchdowns alone, he's probably around that 900 to 1,000 mark and definitely smashes his 80. He's going as wide receiver 27.
Yeah.
So obviously his injury history and kind of his injury concerns already baked into that price. So that's why I really like him as wide receiver 27.
Yeah, well, I think the comparison to Devontae Adams last year is a perfect one because it's one where the situation is perfect You just think that they're going to be trending downwards because they're too old, right? You think Mike Evans is going to start to begin, or maybe began it last year. You think he's going to be taking a step back in his production because of his age. If he doesn't, if you give me the Mike Evans from last year to this year, he's going to be fine, right? I know last year he had a couple injuries, right? If his hamstrings were made of glass, but if you take the Mike Evans from last year and put him into this year, as far as just the ability to physically perform, he's going to be completely fine. Shanahan's offense has always produced so many opportunities for guys, right? And you look at their wide receiver room right now, Deebo Samuel comes back, right? But we all know the Deebo Samuel that we've seen really since he left has but not been the Deebo Samuel that we remember, right? I mean, think of the last year in San Francisco. Obviously, leaves, goes to Washington. Not the Deebo Samuel you remember there either. So he comes back. Ricky Pearsall's already been put on the season-ending injury list because of a knee. So I look at this wide receiver room, it's wide open, right? I mean, even Kittle's still working his way back, right? And who knows how well he's going to be able to come back from that Achilles. So I wouldn't be surprised if there are 8 to 10 targets up for grabs here. And I would fully expect Mike Evans to just walk right into this, again, pending that he's healthy, walk right into this locker room and run with those 8 to 10 targets.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if you're telling me right now, if say Kittle doesn't play week 1, week 2, they kind of just let him ramp back up a little bit. You're telling me a healthy Mike Evans early in the season against a Tonjes, Stribling, and if Christian Kirk gets healthy, like I'm going to take a Mike Evans at ADP of wide receiver 27 all day.
Right, exactly. I would take next year's Mike Evans at that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, for sure.
And,
yeah,
and I understand there's a little bit of concern, right? Can he stay healthy for the entire season? Can he be healthy for the playoffs? But it's kind of one of those where if you're drafting somebody at wide receiver 27, if you're looking for that high ceiling player, the only thing that you can say about Mike Evans is he might get hurt. Well, assuming the quad thing, he can come back from that. If he's not hurt, you would hammer his ADP right now. And it's kind of one of those where, like what you did last year, you're concerned McCaffrey might get hurt, so I'm not going to draft him. You should have drafted him, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those where you have to look at it and say, am I drafting on the player or am I drafting because I'm scared something might happen to them? If you're just drafting on the player, Mike Evans is a smash, draft.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree. I think he's a smash.
My final one here. So I grouped 2 of them earlier. So I had Burden and Egbuka. My final one here, and I promise you this is not a homer pick. I mentioned him earlier too, Jameson Williams. We had him last year. Last year he was going as probably wide receiver 30-something. Wide receiver 25 right now, and I don't understand this at all. He's going 57th overall. Last year he finished as the wide receiver 12 in all of fantasy football. Yes, he played all 17 games. He was the wide receiver 5 though after Dan Campbell took the play sheet, and that's from week 10 on. And that was one of the reasons, and Dan Campbell has said this, that was one of the reasons he took the play sheet is because of the inability to get Jameson Williams involved. I guarantee that their new offensive coordinator, Drew Petzing, was asked in his interview, how are you going to utilize Jameson Williams? I guarantee it. And Petzing loves play action, and I mean loves it. Jameson Williams thrives in play action. If you give him an extra second and a half to get to full speed, and now the defender has to react to whatever it is, right? Obviously, we know he's dangerous on a go route. Last year, we saw him actually be dangerous, across the field. We saw him dangerous on comeback routes. We saw him dangerous on all sorts of routes. We saw him be a complete wide receiver. And this offense is the exact same offense as it was last year, right? Finished as a wide receiver 12. He was the wide receiver 2 on the team. It's exactly what he is this year. There's no change in his role at all. There's nothing that I look at Jameson Williams and says that he's not going to replicate what he did last year. If not, be better, right? Yep. And so I fully expect Jameson Williams to finish as a top 12 to 15 wide receiver at worst. I think if you give me a full season of him being healthy again in this offense that, has a desire to get him involved, I could see him finishing as a top 8 guy. I mean, he is plenty talented. And I think that Petzing is going to use him a lot.
Yeah, and you saw what Petzing did last year with Jacoby Brissett and that passing offense at the end of the year. They were slinging that ball around. I really think, and I like how you said after Dan Campbell took over, he was the 5th overall receiver. The only thing that has made me nervous about Jameson Williams in the past has been the spike weeks. Like some weeks he goes off and then other weeks he disappears. I don't we kind of saw for a stretch last year where he was a little more consistent, even with
Yeah.
Amon-Ra on the field. I'm really excited to see that like him take that next step this year.
Mhm.
Because I think if he does, we're never going to see him his ADP in the wide receiver 20s ever again to start the
No.
year.
No. Well, I think it's you saw enough from him last year to show I'm not a deep ball receiver. I'm a complete wide receiver, which I think that's why we saw the spike week, 2 years ago, because at that point, and that's how he was utilized, was a deep ball. So if he's going to connect on a 60-yard touchdown, he's going to have a great week. If he's not going to, he's going to have 2 catches for 15 yards. Like,
Yeah.
whereas last year, there were plenty of weeks where his longest reception was 25, over the middle, and he still ended up with 95 receiving yards, so I think that's what's promising about him and what gives me, some reassurance. But I think the value you're getting at wide receiver 25, you're talking, into the fifth round. If it's a 10-man league into the sixth round, yeah, there's no way I'm looking at that and I'm not taking Jameson Williams in the fifth or sixth round.
Yeah, and you're telling me also you're buying a receiver at wide receiver 25 that Jared Goff the last 3 years has had 4,500 yards and 30 plus touchdowns every year.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I'm going to buy into an offense where they only have three. Well, if you count Gibbs, they have four pass catchers. Gibbs, Laporta is healthy, and then St. Brown and Jameson Williams. So, if an offense is going to throw for 4,500 yards and they're only going to have four pass catchers, like, I'm going to get the second best one.
Yeah. Well, and just, to simplify this at an extreme level, this will be my final comment about it. He finished as wide receiver 12 last year, and he's in the exact same role. And he's, if anything, going to be better this year than last year, right? It's not like he's Mike Evans, where he's getting to a point where he might start to trend downward. No, he's entering the prime of his career. And he was wide receiver 12 last year. The offense is literally the exact same, if not better, just because of the play caller. Why would he be drafted 13 spots at his position, 13 spots lower than where it was last year? I think that alone just tells you 25 is too low. But
Yeah.
Those are three guys I love. I'm curious to hear your the sixth and final one here of the show.
Yeah, so last one. I'm also choosing an offense with a new offensive play caller. So I'm going Carnell Tate. He's going as wide receiver 30, according to Fantasy Pros right now. I think he walks in here and is easily the target share leader. I know Wan'Dale Robinson the last 2 years. I know they brought him over from the Giants. He has 100. I didn't know this, but before I do research for this, 140 targets the last 2 years. So he's a target machine as well. But I think if you saw Carnell Tate play at Ohio State, he looked really good again, on the opposite side of maybe the greatest wide receiver prospect ever. I think Carnell Tate comes in wide receiver 30 I think is a steal. Every year, one rookie wide receiver is just kind of lower. Like, remember, Jamar Chase was a little bit lower, and then he went off. Justin Jefferson was a little bit lower. He went off as well. I think that's going to be Carnell Tate this year. I think he could finish as maybe a mid wide receiver 2 and just smash that wide receiver 30 ADP.
Yeah, the thing that you get with Carnell Tate too, and this is something that we've talked about in years before that we love doing, is if you're a little bit concerned about the early production of Carnell Tate, then go take like a Mike Evans and pair it with Carnell Tate. Make your wide receiver 2, 3, Evans and Carnell Tate, because Evans is going to produce early, right? If he's healthy, he's producing early. Maybe as the season gets on, you have concerns about it. Well, as the season goes on, Carnell Tate's going to be a stud, right? If you give Carnell Tate 5 games to slowly work himself in, he's going to be a stud. I wouldn't be surprised if by week 2 he is, but the extra safety net of a couple games. But I completely agree. And I think part of what Wan'Dale's target share too was in New York was just the fact, like last year, where Neighbors goes down, and who else are you going to throw to?
Yeah.
That wide receiver room with Neighbors is terrible. So you take Neighbors, or not with Neighbors isn't terrible. With Neighbors is bad.
Yeah.
But it's the only reason it's not terrible is because Neighbors is a stud. So as soon as Neighbors went down, there was really nobody to take targets, and that team was a team that played from behind a lot. So you're playing from behind, and you need to target somebody. Wan'Dale got a lot of those. So yes, Wan'Dale is going to be a good wide receiver, but I think Carnell Tate, he's a physical specimen. He's a complete receiver. I think similar to Emeka Egbuka in the sense of he's just going to walk into an offense and be a safety valve, and no matter what. And the amount of times that especially a young quarterback like Cam Ward is going to appreciate having a safety valve like Carnell Tate, he might be peppered with targets early.
Yeah. And also, like, it's like all of the Ohio State guys when they come out. And you could argue that Carnell Tate's the best at this route running. They've all been good at route running. Garrett Wilson was awesome at route running when he came out. Chris Olave was elite at route running when he came out. All these Ohio State guys are so good at route running when they come out. They're so polished that it just translates so well. And I don't think Carnell Tate's any different. And he got the draft capital. He's going to be the alpha in this offense. I think all of the signs of even Cam Ward looking better during camp apparently showed some flashes last year. And they're bringing over Brian Dable. I mean, Brian Dable, say what you want of him as a head coach, kind of like the Mike McDaniel thing.
Yeah.
But Brian Dable, I mean, kind of helped Josh Allen get on track in Buffalo.
Yep.
And technically the Giants wanted to trade up for Cam Ward last year. So Dable finally gets his guy. And I think Cam Ward takes a step, and that means Carnell Tate's going to smash wide receiver 30.
Yeah, no, I love it. Those are the 6 guys that we have here. We've got six running backs that you need to be targeting, and then we'll have a couple a couple tight ends, a couple quarterbacks you need to be targeting in drafts as well, all coming out in the next week or two. And then after that, Alec, once we're getting into the season, maybe we got a mock draft or 2 right before the season. But we'll be right back at it with weekly start sits like we have been for the last couple of years. So those are 6 wide receivers, though, that you need to be targeting in your drafts. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been the Sports Geeks Podcast. They play, we talk. Thanks, guys. Peace.